always enjoy your perspective on
hmm
stuff. And yeah, there was when the first time we met, when Rick Dreyfuss introduced us and we
Yeah.
got, I remember the conversation about customer acquisition cost and how
hmm
challenging of a
hmm
concept that is, and how often people get it wrong, kind of the
hmm
customer acquisition cost and that life cycle, and been dealing
hmm
with a few challenges of that recently, and kind of figuring
hmm
how to turn that customer
hmm
acquisition cost curve
hmm
the right way.
Number one reason for startups to die is they run out of cash.
Yeah.
Uh, that's like literally the number one reason they all die. And uh, most don't watch cash burn. We kind of made some of those mistakes as well. And that's when you start realizing like you should really pay attention to some of these costs, right? Because like, you know, there's the cost of acquisition, but it's also the time you're spending on
Yeah.
finding the customer, right? And the only thing you can control is time. And if that customer turns out to be wrong, or you spent like a year closing them and they gave you a $10,000 deal, right? That's a bad customer.
Yeah.
At least for a startup, when I came across this statistic that I think it's from CB Insights, that number one reason was that they failed was because they ran out of cash. But it wasn't because the product didn't hit. I mean, product didn't wasn't needed in the market. That could also be why you ran out of cash. And so, I think that every decision you make in your and these big companies as well, it
Yeah.
should be made relative to, what is it going to cost me, right? Like I'm adding a new feature. Okay, this that new feature, you now need to spend money on marketing the feature. So you got to figure out, pay somebody to get the value proposition around it, right? And you may need to do more support, right, for this new feature. So there's a cost on the support side, and um, there might be additional cost on deploying it,
Yeah.
or we talked about earlier, cost to serve, right? You deploy this feature, and all of a sudden your cloud costs shoot up, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I've seen a lot of cloud migrations that increase the price, not decrease it. Something that's
yeah,
architected for private
yeah,
data center doesn't necessarily translate to the cloud without some re-architecture. Thinking through
yeah,
that.
yeah. But the fortunately or unfortunately in industrial, at least the customers that most of our startups deal with, um, they cloud comes with with whatever solution, and it's less about the tech, more about the outcome,
Yeah.
and that's what they care about. Like I've had conversations with factory owners here in Washington, um, who've basically said they recognize that they need technology, right?
Yeah.
AI, right? AI is everywhere. Um, but then they have a tough time figuring out, like, why is this guy's AI better than that guy? They all sound the same.
Yeah.
This is what leads to it's too complicated. I'm not going to do anything. Right? I'll just carry on with status
Yeah.
quo.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
the outcome's what matters.
mhm.
Technology is great, but no one gives a shit about the technology. It's all
Yeah,
about what outcome it delivers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You don't go digging in your car, right? What ECU manufacturer is in the lights or whatever, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
go doing that.
Yeah,
You just
for
need to
sure.
get from A to B. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, it's
how often in the companies that you deal with do you see the value prop kind of evolve significantly from what that first hypothesis is to something where they hit the jackpot and really hit that kind of acceleration curve?
it depends, right? Like in terms of for us, we're in seed Series A, right? So early stage.
Yeah.
So you're expecting some level of pivoting, but frequently the pivoting tends to be not necessarily on the product, but more market, right?
Mm.
Targeting a
Yeah.
different market or finding out that there's some other use case that you hadn't even thought about where the customer's like, yeah, I want it right now, right? And there's a lot more money there. And so it happens. I mean, at least where we're investing, you're still trying to find your way in the world, right? Like in terms
Yeah.
of product, customer segments, ecosystem that you're going to build out, right? That you need to sell your thing, install it, support it.
Yeah.
So you see those all the time, right? In,
Yeah.
in terms of targeting new areas, at least for those startups, and that's what they should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
But
see that a lot. The hypothesis being around here's the market, here's,
mhm,
here's a
mhm,
specific problem I'm trying to solve, which happens to
mhm,
be in this market, but
mhm,
crap, I've solved this problem. I've
yeah,
got a great solution to it, but maybe it's actually not that big of a
yeah,
problem in this
yeah,
market, but this other one that is adjacent or didn't even know about
yeah,
never would have told you in the first place. But
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
suddenly here's where the growth is, and
mhm,
maybe a little bit new skin,
yeah, yeah,
new UI, a little bit of a different segmentation, and
yeah.
you're down.
But
Yeah,
sometimes you don't even need to do that, right? Sometimes it's just like just repositioning your product, right? And but again, right, you have to follow what the market is
yeah.
telling you, and specifically whose day job you change and whose budget you're
So
tapping into.
you mentioned Fastworks early in the conversation, and
Yeah.
I mean the term MVP and kind of agile and things like
Hmm.
that is maybe not as much of a buzzword now as it was back then. Maybe
Yeah.
still a
Yeah.
bit overused, but um, I think one of the biggest advantages that I've seen and kind of
Hmm.
call it an MVP, call it a minimum lovable product, whatever you want,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But getting out there to the customer and testing that idea and getting that feedback, it's
Hmm.
it's not just the product. It's actually
Hmm.
more often than not, it's the actual value prop of that product, what you thought, how the customer was going to value it, what they're going to buy it for, versus, hey, this technology is great, but actually it solves this other problem that you hadn't really thought about.
There's a lot of very good products in startups that died because it couldn't sell, right? And at the end of the day, if you're building a business, you need to be able to sell your product, right? Otherwise, it's just a science project. But if you want to build a business, then you need to be able to learn how to sell or find somebody who can help you sell
Yeah,
upfront, not later.
yeah,
Get the customers upfront, and then the the thing is that if you go build your pipeline before, you'll also figure out who your initial set of customers are going to be, right? The early
yeah,
adopters, all of that, right? It's not a hassle. So by the time you write your first line of code, you already know who's waiting for it, right? Even if it's in a shitty state, right?
yeah,
Because they believe you're going to create enough value for them based on, you know, them helping you
yeah,
define what your MVP is. Take a bag of tricks, right? A bunch of technology and turn them into something for their company, right? The CIO, the CDO, and their organization.
yeah,
But as soon as you get out of that, they don't know, right? They don't care about the technology. The more you talk about the technology, the less likely they are to buy it because they're gonna get confused, right? This is what we're talking about.
yeah,
So the selling dynamics change. You might be selling the same CPU with the same specs, but the way you sell it is very different. And the resources you have as well, right, to deploy it, to use it on the customer side in the ecosystem is also lacking in some places, right? Like, and
yeah.
actually frequently lacking, right? Particularly
Yeah.
around digital stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think sometimes it's an even bigger problem for the larger companies because they got
mhm,
so much more overhead and so much
mhm,
more bureaucry. They can't move as
mhm,
fast. That,
mhm,
it's maybe
mhm,
more tolerant of mediocrity. They're not going to run out of
mhm.
cash as quickly, but the problem
Yeah.
is even more important for them. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you won't need to run to investors to make payroll this week.
Yeah,
You don't need to do that, or somebody else is doing worrying about that, right?
yeah,
Like you're not. You're just coding or selling or whatever your job is. You're not worrying
yeah,
about is my company going to run out of money tomorrow because I made this decision.
yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
in a startup, for sure, you have to decide. Every every decision you make has an impact, right? Has a
yeah,
cost impact somewhere else.
yeah,
And but again, customers, right? You follow what customers tell you, what the market. Salespeople make money, put food on the table when they close a deal, not when they're looking for the deal, right? You put food on the table when you close a deal. So you hear this all the time, and you see this all the time.
yeah,
Founders, particularly technical, who complain about the salespeople that they hire, they can't sell. It's like, nope, that's on you, right? You need to get to the equivalent of product market fit, which is finding some repeatable process of being able to, first contact with customer to when I first show them value, right? A POC.
yeah. No, I remember that discussion, the 12-month being kind of the critical
Yeah,
inflection point where
yeah,
if you get that
yeah,
customer cost recovered within that
yeah,
year, and it's a SaaS business, so you have that
yeah,
long tail of revenue. It's a pretty
yeah,
good product.
yeah.
Um, and you mentioned the product versus sales led growth. I've seen that all over LinkedIn the last couple of weeks. I don't know what's going on. Like everyone's talking product led growth, product led
This
growth.
whole thing with PLG and sales-led growth, you have to actually start with the customer to understand what relationship they want with you. That's where it starts, right?
I've maybe got a bit of a contrarian take on product led growth versus sales led growth. Maybe it's because I
Yeah,
be a
yeah,
salesperson, but
yeah,
uh, you know, I've seen both sides of it. Like
yeah.
pure sales, we just got to get as many customers on,
Mm-hmm,
and that
mm-hmm,
was when we had some of those problems that I
mm-hmm,
described. We were not
mm-hmm,
focused on customer
mm-hmm,
acquisition costs, not
mm-hmm,
on that curve, when the payback
mm-hmm,
was, those kinds
mm-hmm,
of things. But then
mm-hmm,
I also saw an over rotation towards purely product led growth with no
mm-hmm,
input from sales,
mm-hmm,
kind of ignored
mm-hmm,
the customer.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And these products were built up like, oh, we think this, and I had this great idea. I'm not going to check with a sales team whether they think they can sell this. Not going to check whether the customers have any interest in this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and kind of
Yeah.
did not help growth. But
No.
when you've got salespeople that turn into product people, or product
Mm-hmm.
people that go out to market with the salespeople and spend a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time with the
Mm-hmm.
customers, I
Mm-hmm.
found that's like the right symbiosis,
Yeah.
the kind of um,
Yeah.
amalgamation of both sales and products. So I'm a
Yeah.
little worried about all the focus on product without the sales piece, and
As a product guy, say I'm going to move into PLG, right? Or we're going to do just enterprise sales, right? And in fact, we had an example of this from a previous company where I was running a customer advisory board, and the product guys were thinking customers are going to want to talk to a sales guy to buy this bunch of services in a marketplace
yeah,
that you could just sign up. You didn't need a salesperson to talk to. But they had made the assumption that because they were enterprise, all of the customers are enterprise, they only want to buy from a salesperson, right? So they want to talk to their salesperson. And also they didn't want to piss off their sales guy, right? The product
yeah,
people. And when we had this customer advisory board where we actually brought some of these customers in, 100% of them said, there's no way I would buy anything like this. Why would I waste my time calling a sales guy if I can just click on something and download, right?
yeah,
But there's other scenarios where they do need to talk to somebody, right? And so you have to follow what the market and customers are telling you in terms
yeah,
of what relationship they want with you, your product, pre-sales, post-sales, right? Deployment. It shouldn't be you defining what the relationship should be. It should be what the market tells you, right? The feedback that you're getting.
yeah,
And the challenge today is, so again, I'm going to pick on industrial sectors. These are sectors that have been around for decades, right? Centuries, and pretty established. And one of the things that I saw actually at GE with Predix was that the existing ecosystem also is getting disrupted because they're having to keep up with all these new technologies. It's not just the end customers. Some of them are making it, some of them are not, right? And in those scenarios, you again need to go back to the customer, right? I trust this guy more than that guy, right?
yeah,
But this guy can't do my stuff, right? And so I'm not going to use him for this. You need to
yeah,
get that feedback from the customer, right? It is always customer backwards. Because
yeah,
the other thing is also like whatever product you're building and selling, you're not buying it. Somebody else is going to make that decision, right?
yeah,
And like in our case with Norego, we were building a product that we went out looking for, right? Like we ended up hiring
yeah,
engineers instead of we couldn't find the product. And even though we understood the problems that existed that we were trying to solve because we'd been in the shoes of our customers, what we
yeah,
realized was priorities are everywhere, right? They are very different in each business, right? Like, somebody's, this is what keeps me up at night could be somebody else's, I don't care about that, right? In the
yeah,
same sector, same business, and so you have to, even if you have the idea for a product, you have to go talk to those, you know the customers, right? The users, the
yeah,
buyers,
yeah.
and
And this is where kind of the product versus sales piece is
mm-hmm.
important too, because the person who's going to use the product isn't necessarily the one who's going to write the check for it. So
No.
you can get someone who's going to use this product super geeked on it and
Mm-hmm.
super excited about it, but they got to convince the CFO to part with
Mm-hmm.
real dollars and cents to to
Mm-hmm.
buy this, and there's got to be a pretty
Mm-hmm.
quantifiable product problem.
mhm,
in terms of revenue or cost that
mhm,
they're
mhm,
going to be able to
mhm,
convince the CEO and the
mhm,
CFO
mhm,
to part
mhm.
with money for. So
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah,
product folks don't
yeah.
necessarily that's not where it starts, but the sales people are going to run into that
Mhm,
obstacle pretty quickly if they're just trying to
mhm,
pitch the use case,
mhm, mhm,
quantify
mhm.
the benefit there, and tying that back into, how do you measure that?
uh, Not only is it uh, not as easy to sell tech in the
Yeah,
industrial sectors, right? Like I said, the resources are not there. You have to think different, and unfortunately, too much of the conversation is taken up by the tech and the
yeah.
AI, and not enough on this side, right? Like what are the jobs that we're
Technology
trying
is exciting, but again, doesn't pay the
to?
bills. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. No one eats.
So there's definitely a need for this type of a conversation. Have
Yeah,
a forum for this type of a conversation.
yeah,
Uh, and But that became quite clear to me. I think these roundtables that we do with our portfolio companies that everyone is hungry for this type of a discussion.
yeah,
If you want to learn how a different AI model works, there's a ton of information out there,
yeah.
right? If you want to go after a particular customer, not so much.
Ugh, if only it were just about the AI and not about making money.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That so.
Yeah. All right.
But all right,
Well,
man.
great to
Um,
talk to you, Hans. Thanks for
Same here.